welcome to Wrestlesphere. That's right, the very first live stream on Wrestlesphere. But not only that, we're on Give Me a Hull, yeah, we're on Soundsphere, we're across platforms. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, this is the Royal Rumble recap. We're going to go back through one of the biggest events of the year with some of the best action of the year. We're going to deconstruct it. We're going to ask your thoughts, and we're going to get feedback from some key industry voices like Sam Smith and Andy Spores will be joining us shortly, the Wrestlesphere team. And thank you to those who are tuning in from Give Me a Hull, yeah, and Soundsphere. And we'll be back right after this fantastic intro from Inkblock Films. Check it out. Yeah, check that out.
I love that so much.
Man. Yeah, man.
I know we've had that about a year, but I absolutely adore it. I never get tired of it.
It's the first time we've used it in this context. The first ever live stream on Wrestlesphere, but also on Soundsphere and Give Me a Hull, yeah, because we don't want to alienate our audience across platforms. So thank you very much if you're joining us right now, or if you join us after the fact. Whichever channel you're tuning in from, Give Me a Hull, yeah, Wrestlesphere or Soundsphere, we appreciate you very, very much. Now, Sam, we've got a series of questions. We're going to run through some points, but I'm going to get your general, before we dig deep into the Rumble goodness from a few nights ago, I'm going to get your general viewpoint. How was it for you?
I enjoyed it. I thought the Women's Royal Rumble was better than the men's. I think it had just a little bit more momentum. But sorry, my dog has decided now that we go live, now he's going to kick off. Now he's going to bang the door, and now he's going to bark. Finley, go away. But yeah, there we are. So yeah, I thought the women's was the better match. I thought the men's had some lulls, some moments where things were kind of didn't quite gel, but I thought they nailed the finish. I thought they stuck the landing. That's what matters in the Rumble the most. And the other two matches were wholly predictable, but I still enjoyed them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was some fantastic matches in there. And I've got some points to go through, Sam, some talking points that I've selected. But of course, if you want to sort of dig in here and kind of interrupt me with some things I might have missed, I want you to do that. I want you to challenge me on this because I've picked out some key points. And you guys, of course, in the comments, feel free to challenge me. I've picked out my key bits, but I want you guys to feed back in. And talking about feeding back, so I don't know how I'm going to segue this, but we have the ultimate super guest on Wrestlesphere, on Soundsphere, and on Give Me a Hull, yeah. I don't know where the hell that came from. But anyway, regardless of all that bollocks, it's Andy Spores from Wrestling Royalty! What's up, man? How you doing?
That was worth being late for just to get that introduction because it was a perfect mix of absolute waffle and hype. I liked it.
I was trying to hype you up for the Rumble, in a Rumble-y way, but it failed miserably. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Samantha Even's got nothing on you, man.
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here, and thank you so much for making the time to be here. I'm going to try and let's see if there's is that a better.
JPW saying you just busted his eardrums. Yeah, me too, mate. Me too.
I'm not sure I want a crotch just literally there. That would be a bit of a weird background to go with.
Yeah, I know. I thought, I was trying to be as professional as possible, but I need to. Next time, we're going to lower the Wrestlesphere down. Anyway, the very first Wrestlesphere live stream of all time, but also on Give Me a Hull, yeah, also on Soundsphere. So thank you so much again for joining us, Andy. Thank you so much if you're joining us on the other side of the screen. If you're joining us right now, if you're joining us in the future, it's much appreciated. As I was saying to Sam, I picked out some key points, Andy, that I want to address today, and I'd like you to challenge me if you think there's any more. Also in the comments, of course, challenge me if you guys think I've missed anything. But Andy, in general, how did you find the Royal Rumble?
I really enjoyed it. I must say I enjoyed the Rumble matches, but The Fatal 4-Way I found a bit disappointing. I thought there was a bit of an ebb and a flow to it, but it felt like a really big event, which is, I think, what you want the Rumble to be. You want to kick off the year with a nice big premium live event, some big moments coming out of it. Not all good, not all bad, but I would say for the whole, it was a positive premium live event with a lot to talk about, which I think is the main thing, really, because we're going to have that massive one at WrestleMania, but this is just the kind of like the hype event, I guess. And I think it delivered on that front. But yeah, I think there's lots to talk about. I won't hog too long, but I'm excited to talk about it because there's a lot to dig into.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we are going to dig in. Let's get into the comments before we do that. JPW joining us. I loved the Royal Rumble this year. I'm so glad. We want Liv Morgan. Yeah, Liv Morgan was there. We are going to talk about that at all. We've also got a couple of comments on the Punk injury, and I promise we'll get to that as well. Sassy, our moderator over on Give Me a Hug, yeah, is here. Please continue to support Wrestlesphere and Soundsphere, as well as Give Me a Hug, yeah, and Wrestling Royalty and the Misfit Wrestling Podcast. So wherever you are,
a lot of
indeed, please support all the channels. So the first point of business, guys, which I think, given our relationship, given how supportive they've been of our platforms, should be the potential working relationship between WWE and TNA. Of course, this is exciting because we obviously, TNA is doing great. It's been doing fantastic since the rebrand. But at the Royal Rumble, we saw a fantastic entry.
Yes, we did.
How were you expecting Jordan Grace, guys? Let's go with Sam first and then go to Sporzy. What was that like for you guys to see Jordan Grace from TNA, the TNA Knockouts champion, in the Rumble?
I'm really pleased about it. Now, I read about it earlier before it happened, so it was spoiled for me, but I don't mind because even though it wasn't a surprise, it was still fascinating to see. It was amazing to see just even the TNA belt on WWE TV. But just before I carry on, I just want to address something that I keep seeing on Twitter, guys, and it's really time to put this silly rumor to bed. So there seems to be, and this is going back 2 years to when Mickie James was a trailblazer and was the first Knockouts champion to appear on a WWE show. Now, there's a silly rumor going around that happened because Vince didn't know she worked there. That is an absolute load of rubbish. It happened because TNA and WWE had a conversation with Mickie James. They both agreed to it, and the belt, every single aspect of it, the belt, Mickie James, all of it was deliberate. TNA, or Impact as they were called then, WWE and Mickie James were all involved in making that happen. It had nothing to do with somebody like, it wasn't a case of Mickie James and TNA sneaking the belt onto WWE TV. Of course, that's absolutely ridiculous. Even the commentators put it over. It was pre-planned and it was a wonderful moment. But this eclipsed it. This was, because it almost means more to see Jordan Grace on there with not just the TNA belt, but because Mickie James is just as much a WWE superstar as she is a TNA superstar. She lives in both worlds and loves both worlds equally, where Jordan Grace has never appeared in a WWE ring on TV. So this was a huge moment. Now, do I think it's going to lead to massive things between WWE and TNA in the future? I actually don't. So that's not me being skeptical or critical. It's just I think neither of them really need each other. They've got their own ways of doing things. But in the Royal Rumble, and every now and then a little crossover between the two would be fantastic, and I'm all for it. They're very much their own universes and their own worlds, but if they're going to acknowledge each other more, just little things like that, that's what the fans appreciate. But hey, if they ever do a larger crossover, I'm here for it.
Absolutely, I'm very much on that side of the fence as well. Andy Spores, your thoughts, please, on this, because you kind of been getting more into TNA, especially as our working relationship has developed. How do you feel about TNA featuring in the Rumble? Some people say it dilutes what they're doing now. Obviously with the rebrand. Where do you sit on this? How does it work for you?
So I every year I watch the Royal Rumble live, and then my wife loves the Royal Rumble. It's like the one event outside WrestleMania that she will make a point of saying, I want to watch the Royal Rumble matches. With the women's matches, there was 2 people, one of which was Jordynne Grace, and the other was the debut in Jade Cargill, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. Jade, she literally sat forward in her seat and was like, who is this? But earlier on, when Jordynne came out, she said, wow. Like literally her words were wow. And I think anyone who isn't, knowledgeable of TNA or Jordynne, this was the perfect way to have someone from another promotion come in, look like an absolute superstar, get people talking and generate interest. Now, that's not a shot at anything that anyone else has ever done. Like TNA, Impact at the time had a working relationship with AEW. I think, in my opinion, AEW took a lot more out of that relationship. In this example, I think Jordynne Grace looks an absolute star, gets a lot of buzz around her. And I think people would genuinely think, I need to go see what she's doing, because if this is the champion, I want to see anyone else who's in that division as well. Because not only that, they reinforced it by talking about Naomi and her having that Knockouts championship. They then had that moment in the ring where they kind of embraced and just started beating the hell out of each other. It was very well done. And they didn't just have like a couple of moves. They peppered her in throughout. And I just thought it was a perfect introduction to who she is and would pique people's interest wanting to see TNA. And I completely would understand why TNA did that. And I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe they said, we'll do it, but you owe us a favor. So maybe in the future we see someone like AJ Styles go back home and have a match or something.
That'd be ace.
And I think like this to me was the way to do a relationship. It works for both parties. It works for the individual. And I want to see more Jordynne Grace, because my mind straight away was like, I need to see a match against this person and this person and this person. And yeah, just absolutely fantastic. I'd love to hear what everyone else thought, because on a night where Jade Cargill could have stolen it, Jordynne Grace more than held her own. Yeah. So well done.
Absolutely. And it's very exciting. And I think, we'll talk about Jade Cargill in a moment, because again, as you guys say, got everybody talking. But I think, while we're on the TNA side of things, of course, just returning from TNA is Naomi. Naomi was there. Great return. One of the first names to come out, looked fantastic. Had an Iron Woman. I believe the Iron Woman performance was Naomi's for the Rumble. It was Bayley, but it was closely followed by Naomi, I think, in second. So we'll talk about Naomi first, then we'll go on to Jade Cargill. Now, Trinity, as it was in TNA, did some fantastic work in her time away from WWE. There is a interview with Trinity on Wrestlesphere right now for those who want to go and check out Wrestlesphere on YouTube. I think that she did fantastic work, and it's there's glowing reviews for her time in TNA all over social media. I didn't even do that on purpose. all over all over social media are these reviews from staff, from talent, from TNA. What do you think Naomi/Trinity did for TNA? And also, guys, what do you think TNA did for Naomi, did for Trinity in that time away? Let's start with Andy this time and then move to Sam. What are your thoughts on Naomi and that transitional period from WWE to TNA and Impact and back to WWE at one of the biggest PLEs of the year?
Yeah, so myself and Sam, I think I spoke about this over on Royalty before. I will preface this with, I've never been the biggest Naomi fan, but I thought she got a great reception. I saw one of the comments there from Mark saying that he might have brought Naomi out first. I would respectfully disagree. I think it would have been nice if they brought her out as number 3, because I always feel like in the Royal Rumble, you get that nice build up for the countdown and then the sound, and then there's the anticipation. But I think when you're 1 and 2, you don't get quite the same build. For me, that's just like a thing that maybe you could have brought her out third to get that big pop. But her entrance is so like kind of unique, and you know who it is straight away. It kind of works, I guess. But in terms of the transition, I think it was sad to see it go, but I think it was the best thing. Like you see it in people like Drew, where they've gone away, worked somewhere else, and then you see them kind of like grow as a performer. I think she's picked up a couple of like things for her arsenal. She moves a little bit better. She looks a little bit like stiffer in the best sense possible. Whereas some of the times before, like I think when she was doing her original run, it really annoyed me when she does those sort of like I don't know how to explain it, where it's like on the spot kicks, where she's sort of jogging and kicking at the same time. And it just looked a little bit poor. Whereas here, it looked a little bit more like clean. The strikes looked better. And she just felt like a little bit more of a star. And also, quite frankly, seeing her get emotional was great. I always like it when you see the emotions behind things. So her getting that reception would have meant the absolute world to her that she hasn't been forgotten. So it was great to see her get that kind of reception. And they've got a star back. So TNA, in the meantime, I thought, have benefited from someone who was fairly big in WWE and a good hand. They've built her up. She's built herself up. And then they've come back. Or she's come back. So again, another example of it works all around. So I don't think TNA would be distraught for losing her, but they used her in the time that they had, built her up, built the Knockouts Championship up again. Fantastic work by everyone. Yeah, really good, I think. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, you're on mute, mate.
Oh, rookie mistake. The first ever stream on Wrestlesphere. Sam, it had to be done. Sam, your thoughts, please, on Naomi Trinity and that transition. Like I say, I'm very much in agreement with what Sporsy said. We've got some quite interesting comments on different people seem to be split on Naomi Trinity's talent. But tell me your thoughts on what Trinity did for TNA and what TNA did for Trinity, please.
Yeah, everything. Like, first of all, I kind of liked that she came in second because it did something I kind of enjoy in wrestling. It gave her the time. Do you know what I mean? And Natty as a character in kayfabe also gave her the time to kind of just soak it in for a minute before they were like, right, come on, it's business time. So I thought if she'd come in number 3, you're right, it would have had that franticness and that pop, but I like how she just had that minute to soak it in. That's just me. But yeah, my dog has smashed his way into the room. Hilarious. But with TNA, TNA have a position in the industry that they feel comfortable with, in my opinion. They know who they are, what they're about. They got the roster, and it's kind of nice that they sort of have an ever evolving roster in more of a way than AEW and WWE do, in the fact that people will go there briefly while they're either in between those other two companies or whatever it may be. And it actually adds an element of freshness and excitement to it. And also as well, it's a great way of rehabilitating people as well, because people get lost in the shuffle in WWE, people get lost in the shuffle in AEW. And when they go to TNA often bring them in with a vision and an idea of what they're going to do. And Trinity came into TNA, was a massive star, tore the house down, and then went back, and we missed her. And it is sometimes a case of absence makes the heart grow fonder. How can I miss you if you won't go away, and things like that. And TNA just adds something to them, and I don't think they lose anything when they go away and do that. Like Dolph Ziggler now, or Nick Namath, feels like a big star in TNA, where I've been taking it for granted in WWE, and I think a lot of people have. So I love where we are right now, and I'm just going to let this stupid dog have a week, and I'll be right back, guys.
It's a beautiful time for wrestling, and you mentioned there, Sam. Obviously, Arnold Schwarzenegger's in there. Love it. Sam mentioned there, Dolph Ziggler, Nick Nemeth, big ringer star. Look, Mustafa Ali is about to debut in TNA, and it feels huge. He feels like a huge star. They've branded it as such, and they have this way, Andy, of branding, mid-level, mid-card people as huge main event stars in TNA, and actually them reinventing themselves. Look at Drew McIntyre, Drew Galloway in TNA. He was a mid-carder in WWE. Obviously, he went and did his time on the Indies in the UK, but then went to TNA and was a main eventer. I would venture to say Bobby Lashley the same. You know, I'm not saying that they're directly the same, but TNA reinvents people, and I think that is what happened with Naomi. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the way I've said it with Sam before is when I think of TNA, I think of somewhere that has their hardcore base of like TNA faithfuls that will be there throughout everything, and they're rewarded for that because they're generally the ones that will have the titles, the belts. They'll be the ones that hang around the main event. I'm talking previously about your Sami Callahans and your Mooses and things like that, and they keep them around because they're the ones that the company means something to them. But then you drip in these ones who have been maybe people who have never had the push that that fans believe they should have done. They're, because of the position they're in, they can kind of take that chance that maybe WWE or AEW won't with certain people. And that's very true for someone like Dolph, who at one point everyone was on board with him being champion, and he had that massive moment cashing the briefcase. And then it just never seemed to be like his moment. It moved on a little bit. He became very good at bumping and kind of like selling for other people, but nothing more than that. And it never went anywhere. And then the same with Mustafa Ali. I think you'd be hard pressed for someone to say you couldn't tell he's gifted in the ring, but something just didn't quite click. And I think he's case in point where he needs to go somewhere. He needs to experience some other stuff. He needs to get a cult following, a very kind of behind him, and build his own star. And TNA is the perfect place for him to do that.
Absolutely.
I believe it. And I also think he could be a very prosperous champion for them in the long run. And then I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know politically whether he'd want to go back to WWE, but we are seeing more so that under Triple H, people are a bit more willing to say, I'll give it another go. And maybe in 2-3 years' time, he's one of those people who come back. But he's one of those people I'm going to be watching with interest. I want to see where his career goes now. Will he live up to that potential that people believe he has, and he has in himself as well?
Absolutely, and that's really interesting because I've gone on record numerous times and argued with the team over at Gimme a Hug, about Dolph Ziggler being, one of the best of all time, one of the most underrated performers of all time. I believe personally that he's better than Shawn Michaels. That is my take, and I stand by it. And I'm happy to see him in such a prominent position. Before we move on to Jade Cargill, because that is where we are going next, guys, I do want to address a couple of comments from Tammy Lynn on News Now. Some comments around Naomi's skill and relevance as a performer, referring to Naomi as a one-trick pony. Now, I think that Naomi has all the qualities of a star and a sports entertainer. The moveset, the moveset, it's not some people's taste. But then look at guys like R-Truth who've constantly reinvented themselves. Naomi seems to be the kind of performer that can constantly reinvent herself, constantly adapt to new environments. I will address that comment, guys, in terms of Naomi's skills. Some of you guys have said that, not necessarily your favorite performer all round Naomi. So where do you sit on, is Naomi a one-trick pony? Or do you think she's got another WWE, women's championship run in her, for example, now that she's back? Let's go with Sam first on this one.
Yeah, I think she's insanely athletic. I think there's absolutely a place for her in wrestling. She hung with people in TNA who are. Tammy has corrected that to mean Jade Cargill, not Naomi.
Okay. No, I think she's meaning the one above that, which is I do believe she put Cargill. She put Jade, but I think that's what she's.
Oh right, I see. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So no, I think Naomi's incredibly athletic. Like TNA alone, her run there proved that she can hang with some proper wrestling, knockout wrestlers. Like Jordan Grace, like the matches, the two big matches with Jordan Grace and the ones against Deonna Purrazzo and a few other stars were excellent matches. They were really good. In WWE, she was booked a certain way, and I don't know if that necessarily helped in earlier runs. But I've never watched a Trinity or a Naomi match and thought, oh, that was bad, that was terrible. It's never happened. I've seen her live, I've seen her in person. I've been very, very up close to one of her last matches in TNA. And yeah, like there are people I would throw those criticisms at way before Naomi. So I'm going to defend her. I don't think, unless you can point to a specific match and say that one, then I'm sorry, I'm going to have to respectfully disagree. I don't see what the problem is. You're on mute again, mate.
I'm just going to leave the mic on. I'm just going to leave.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah,
unless I'm squeaking on my chair.
Yeah, that's the way forward. I look at when it's happened to other people, and I'm like, I'm never going to let that happen to me again. And here I am, right here on Wrestlesphere, our very first stream, doing it. So, but anyway, yes. Moving swiftly on, Sporzy, your thoughts then on that comment? Naomi's skill set again. You have said that Naomi's not been a favorite of yours.
Yeah, I think it's it's an interesting comment. I think it can be fair in some people's opinion, and that's all we can ever go off. It's all kind of our own opinions. I see what you mean about the kind of doing the butt bump thing that she does. Or is it the rear view?
Rear view, yeah.
Yeah,
well, that's not for me either personally. Sorry to jump in there, mate. But
I think that's the criticism. I think is it's a strange sort of skill set, but she's very athletic. And in terms of where she's come from, let's not forget she was one of the Funkadactyls originally, and she's moved on from that. And the glow thing's not for everyone. But what I will say is, when you go to a live event, if you had the opportunity to go to a live event, look at the way that the audience gets into her entrance. Now, if all she is an entrance to some people, she still gets that reaction, which is great. And I think I'll reserve judgment on terms of how she is in the ring now that she's back from TNA. Let's see how she's kind of adapted. There's a lot of new possibilities for her to go into in terms of feuds moving forward. Being out of a company for over a year will give you that, because people have moved into that position. So yeah, we'll see who she goes up against. I think she needs to have worked on her mic skills, because I don't think they were great before. She had a couple of decent promos in TNA, so she needs to continue that. But she's got a story to tell now that she's back. She's got some experience outside of WWE, and she needs to bring that in to really kind of round out her new character coming back in. What about yourself, Dom? You give us your opinion. I know you're the host, but you're another big TNA fan as well. So I'd love to hear what you think about Naomi coming back.
Yeah, for me personally, I'm a huge TNA fan. Obviously, they have been so good from a media standpoint to me for years across platforms, and so I've got a lot of love for them behind the scenes and in front of the camera. I think their action's always been great. They don't necessarily always run shows on the most accessible times. Sometimes they're, I haven't been able to watch shows as readily as I'd like. But aside from that, the action's been fantastic, and their talent rotation. They're very comfortable with their place in the industry. They're very comfortable with the fact that they're a launch pad for some stars. They're a transitional point for others. Look at the careers. AJ Styles launched, transitional. Naomi, countless other examples. Bobby Lashley, Drew Galloway, transitional people going to TNA. I love TNA. It's one of the least. Yeah, I'd love to work at TNA because it's the least drama-filled company, at least from what I understand. You just see them put out banging matches. There's no drama or very little drama behind the scenes, and that is the kind of company that I'm very happy to be, somewhat involved, with in terms of media stuff. In terms of Naomi and Trinity, fantastic. The TNA effect has struck again. The TNA effect has struck again. The TNA effect is what I call what happened to Bobby, what happened to Drew, and now has happened to Naomi. Countless other examples have benefited from what I call the TNA effect, and that is
the TNA rub. We can be a bit naughty with that.
We can. The TNA rub. I love a good rub from TNA.
Don't we all?
And I respect the company, and I think that is the case. Sorry.
One thing I was going to say, Dom, every time now, and I've interviewed a lot of TNA wrestlers. I know you have, and Andy, you've had a bunch as well over on Wrestlesphere, on our YouTube and on our website. And I always ask them, about TNA or Impact as a home to them. And it's always the point where they break kayfabe, if we're even in it or not, and they talk about the company in such a great way. And it's never just PR. You know how like you sometimes speak to some and they'll put the company over because it's there, just because it's where they work. Like, you genuinely get the sense that they mean it when they talk about TNA. They do feel appreciated, and it's like people like Moose has kind of laughed if you've ever considered him going anywhere else. And that doesn't mean he won't one day, because Moose is thinking, why the hell would I? You know, I'm top of the card here right now. I'm TNA champion. You know, I make good money. I'm on TV. I'm a star. The company are a big company. You know, they make stars. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going over there where the things are going on backstage or whatever else. Like, again, I'm a massive AEW fan. I'm a massive WWE fan. But when I talk to these guys, I get it. I just get it. And it's not going to be right for everyone. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think every major wrestler owes it to themselves to see what it's like in TNA, to see what it's like in AEW, to see what it's like in WWE, because one of these companies will suit you more than the other two. And sometimes it's about finding it. But they used to say in WWE, don't they? Go away and learn another hold and come back.
Yeah.
And that basically meant go to Japan back in the day or go to a different territory. And in WWE, they go away and they learn another hold. And TNA is the best place to go and learn that figurative hold.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very much on your side there, Sam. I love TNA, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for them. Another superstar, while we're on this topic, that I think we couldn't do this stream without discussing, is of course Jade Cargill. Jade Cargill getting that rub in the Royal Rumble, getting that star showing, an absolute star-making showing for Jade Cargill, guys. What is there that hasn't already been said? I know obviously we're a few days removed. There's a reason why we've done this, to reflect, to take it in a few days afterwards. It seems unanimous across wrestling X or Twitter, across social media. Jade Cargill is a star. The hype was real. Let's start with Sporsy on this one. Was that better than you expected? Was it everything you wanted and more? Was it, I'm not going to say that you're not going to say it's disappointing. I don't want to assume your viewpoint on Jade Cargill in the Rumble, but Sporsy, give it to me. What do you think about this as a debut, as a launch pad for Jade?
Yeah, so I was singing the praise before of that relationship between TNA and WWE and how that was kind of framed. But in terms of perfection, and I don't use that term loosely, I think this was as near to perfect as a debut as you could have wanted. They made her look like an absolute superstar. They brought her out at, I think, precisely the right moment. They didn't overexpose her, but they didn't give her that kind of like, let's just put her in at number 30 and get that like kind of, 30 is a big pop, but at the same time, is like you want to kind of give her a little bit of time in the ring. The fact that she just lifted Nia Jax, who at that point had looked like an absolute monster and machine in there. She lifted her up with absolute ease. She looks a superstar. Like, far be it from me to comment on like appearances, but she's stunning, absolutely stunning, ripped to bits. And when you think of like, I think Pat McCaff said like, on his commentary, he was like, wrestling gods, make me a superstar. Here you go, here's Jade Cargill. And like, he absolutely nailed it. He had like a few lines like that throughout. Like he said about Jordan Grace, it's like, she's the Knockouts champion. TNA have got an absolute weapon. So he dripped them in throughout. But like the way the commentators spoke about her, the way the crowd reacted, the way that she performed, she didn't have to do much because they brought her in at 28, but she did enough. Like she had a couple of stare downs after getting Jade out. So she stared down Becky, kind of had a hand in Becky's elimination. All those kind of like bits and pieces. She was in the final 3 and it took 2 established female superstars to kind of eliminate her at the end as well. And big thing for me, and it was such a nice little touch. The bit at the end where the camera was kind of panning around, you saw all of the eliminated superstars on the outside looking on a bit forlorn. That was such a nice little thing. And it was just like kind of makes it feel like the Rumble is such a big prospect to win and such a big event. So I thought that was fantastic. And as I say, for me, if I was marking that as a debut, it's a 10 out of 10. She absolutely nailed it. And well done, WWE, for sticking with their guns and dripping her in when they thought the time was right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sam, your time is now. Comment on Jade Cargill in the Rumble. If you please, give it to me, mate. What did you think of this absolute, again, fantastic run from Jade Cargill in the Rumble?
Yeah, it was great to see it, because I actually didn't think we were seeing her tonight. I thought they were going to either save her for Mania or closer to Mania or something like that. I thought we were going to see her walk out, interrupt somebody after a main event of a pay-per-view, or we were going to see her walk out on Raw and cut a promo. But I'm fine with this as well. Now, again, there seems to be like dirt sheets are speculating, and we are the anti-dirt sheet, by the way, here at Wrestlesphere. The anti-dirt sheet. We don't report stuff or talk about stuff until it's a fact. Of course, there's plenty of opinion to go around, but yeah, we don't really traffic in rumors. But yeah, so like there does seem to be concerns, which backstage, at least that seems clear, because she's only just debuted now. But who knows? That might just because this was the right time, and there is nothing to report or nothing to say. So I don't see a problem. I enjoyed her debut. I thought she looked good in the ring. I never had a problem with her in AEW. In fact, in AEW, towards the later end of her run there, I remember thinking to myself, and I said it on Gimme a Hole, how improved she was, and she felt like a star. But by the end, she really looked like a star and was one. And that's why WWE have snapped her up. So I'm excited to see more. I want them to use her sparingly. If there is any like issues with not ring rust per se, but getting her to learn WWE style, they can take the time. It's fine. I'm happy with seeing her cut a few promos. I don't even need to see her wrestle until WrestleMania, guys. I'm fine with that.
Okay. I do have another question regarding Jade, though, because for me, the Women's Rumble was the best Rumble of the night, and there was some fantastic spots in there that eclipsed anything I saw for the rest of the night. Really, one of them, and I'm just bringing Jade back in here. There would have been a better picture that I didn't prepare, and that is, I'll just describe it to you: the face-off between Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair. So there is a question here that I would like you guys to discuss, because it was a beautiful moment across culture, across wrestling. Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair facing off in the ring and in the Rumble, two very athletic, very face of the company style performers. Is that what you want to see at WrestleMania, lads?
I didn't until I did. Does that make any sense? Because I was, Andy and I fantasy booked WrestleMania this year, and I've fantasy booked. I've probably changed that a million times since you and I did that, Andy. But I'm now, if we kind of know roughly what the women's matches are going to be for the belts. We've got a good idea now, but that leaves Cargill and Bianca Belair without anything to do. So, and if Charlotte flares out on injury, which absolutely sucks, because that was what I was kind of hoping for, because it writes itself. But now we get powerhouse versus powerhouse, Belair versus Cargill. That sounds awesome to me. I can't wait. I hope they do it.
Yeah.
Also gives us a third big women's match and you know what? We don't need a belt. I don't need a belt in that feud. I just want to see who's the better woman.
Yeah. On a wrestling context, absolutely. Spalsy, your thoughts on that, please?
Yeah, it's very difficult to disagree with anything Sam said there. I think they positioned it really well in terms of, like, they kind of said, it's like the Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at each other, because they're very similar in terms of very athletic looking, very strong, dominant in the ring. And it would be interesting to see, because I think Bianca's probably more athletic in the sense of, like, she, more gymnastic experience, whereas Jade's more of a sort of powerhouse. But as Sam said, I don't actually have to see Jade wrestle again until WrestleMania, which would give her a good solid all of February and all of March to continue her sort of training. It sounds like she's been doing a lot of work with Natalya and TJ. who do great work with the women's roster for WWE. And the more she does that, maybe have her a little bit more present in what she was doing, what they were doing with CM Punk, where they kind of have her do some promos, because I've seen some of the comments where people are saying she's maybe not the strongest talker. I don't think she's ever had a problem with speaking from what I've seen. Like some of the backstage promos she did, I thought were okay. Much more passable than some others that we've seen. So continue to work on that, put her in front of people. But I think what they'll probably do is hype up a little bit more in her appearance. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where she lands. And SmackDown probably needs a bit of an injection of star power, because I think the last couple of weeks, as Sam would probably be the better person to say, it's maybe lacked a little bit of something in SmackDown, especially as we now don't know when we'll next see Roman. Presumably, if Cody's calling the shot, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Then there's some heavy lifting to do over on SmackDown. So I also think with all the kind of injuries and the speculation, this is the chance to really build the women's roster up to WrestleMania, give us some meat to get into. And I'd love to see these two eventually go into a fight. And as Sam said, do you need a belt? The one question I would like to ask you both, most people are in agreement that the Women's Rumble was the best match of the night and really stood out. And it shows you the depth that roster has. Do we need a mid-card belt for the women's roster?
That's a very interesting question. Sam, you sound like you've got something trying to get out there in terms of your thoughts on that. What do you think?
See, I think you could get away with a women's intercontinental and a women's United States or something to that extent. But I feel like now I've been confused about the women's belts ever since they rebranded them. Like they're both just the women's champion, but one's the world champion and one's not. So it kind of feels to me like they've already done that. Does that make sense? And I now feel like now she's not, and Misfit's going to absolutely murder me for saying this, but I feel like they've kind of set Rhea Ripley over Sky a little bit in just how they refer to the belts. So I like it might be nice to have more, but I feel like now they've done that, it would just make it even more confusing. But I'd be game as long as they kind of fixed whatever's going on with the branding of them right now, and it because I'm not the only one who said that. But yeah, in theory, I'm up for it because it would give them more to go after. But I sometimes think less belts is more. I do sometimes think that, like AEW at the moment, I've completely lost track of how many there are. And it's also because the it might not be so bad if we also have the ROH ones on there too. And I love ROH, huge ROH guy, but because they kind of won't just separate the rosters and do two shows that are connected but separate, it just feels like everyone has a belt on AEW, and I don't like it. WWE has felt like that before, but it doesn't at the moment because they've got the belts on all the right people. So, like, Logan Paul is the right person to have one. Gunther's nailing it. Roman Reigns, this is historic. And Seth Rollins is the workhorseman. He deserves that one too. So, I just feel like as cool as it could be, it could also backfire horribly as well. But I'm also of the view, one final point, that anything the men have, the women should have in wrestling. So, with that in mind, yeah.
It's more that kind of like we've got a lot of people coming up from NXT. Like we saw Roxanne Perez had a good showing in the Rumble yesterday. But is it believable for a Roxanne Perez to come up from NXT and go into some sort of title fight? Because even then you've got people like that are still kind of kicking their heels, like Indy Hartwell, Candice LeRae, Shayna Baszler, Zoe Stark. And then what happens is they then get shoehorned in to a tag team because that's the only sort of championship they've got available to them. It feels like there's a stage where you kind of build people that are just kind of on the periphery, or maybe have to take the kind of like be the full women from time to time. And I just think it does a little bit of the heavy lifting to get people set up, because one of the criticisms of have of Rhea is who is there to actually challenge her before the Royal Rumble? Because that's the reason why, in my opinion, she wasn't on the card, was because there was no believable people to go against. But if you had, say, I don't know, maybe we harken back to WCW and you throw on a women's TV championship, and that's kind of like a bit of a callback to WCW, and you give that to the women, because I don't want it to just be the women's IC belt or the women's US title. I want to see something a little bit different, or maybe we give them the European belt like we used to have, like maybe it's the women's European like championship, and I'm fine with that. And I just think, to me, it gives some incentive and gives something for that mid to lower card to kind of chase and build up and then go on. But I know then people can say, well, they did that with, and it kind of failed with Jade, where she didn't then move up and kind of go for the bigger titles in AEW. And she had that, was it the TBS or whatever it is, championship?
Well, that one's now arguably just as big of a deal as the original one. But one thing they could do, which I'm a big advocate of, it's like I'm channeling Paul Heyman, is, like, again, we don't always need a belt. Like, I love that idea, actually. I never thought of it that way, in the way that it would give people like Roxanne or whoever something to do. Because I'm always of the view that a good story doesn't need a belt. And there's been so many examples of that over the years. Belts are great, and obviously we need them. We need the championships, the titles, but they do sometimes get in the way. They are sometimes the thing, as you said, about shoehorning them into tag teams. Yeah, that is like, WWE or AEW are struggling with somebody when they're put into a random tag team for no reason. But sometimes there's nothing better than a decent story. Just sit down and what would make a good match and what would make an exciting. And sometimes it's all it needs to be is who's the better person in the ring, and one person getting more insecure than the other. And like, let's go. If ever in doubt in wrestling, go back to basics. Make it about the rankings somewhat and who wants to be above of whoever it is climbing the mountain. That's sometimes all they need to do.
Well, I mean, the ranking system.
The rankings.
Yeah, I've got my viewpoints on that, but in short, an intercontinental women's champion. I'm down with that. As a mid card potentially, yes, I would be up for something like that.
Tammy Lynn has just said, bring back the 24/7 belt. If they do that,
bring it back as the hardcore title. Give me that. Give me that.
Oh, I don't want to see either, personally.
Dex has just brought up basically that Howard summarised that. I agree with what Sam said, but as Dex says there, good stories don't need belts, but every wrestler should be there to be a champion. Belts just...
agreed.
I think that's the best way of summarising that. I think, but you can tell stories outside of a belt, absolutely, but I think having that incentive there would kind of give it a little bit more legitimacy. So I fully agree with Dex. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about the road to the championship picture as much as it is about the championship picture, though. For example, that's why people like Eddie Kingston are a massive deal, and why him winning the Ring of Honor championship is a massive deal, because his is such an underdog story that now that he's actually done it, I'm like, oh wow, hell, now what? The next one. Now I want more. But what's made Eddie Kingston someone like that so good is it's taken him so long to get there when we all knew he deserved it. So I don't necessarily. Sometimes making me wait is the story, and that works really well with certain people. So it works with some more than others. Like that's never going to work on Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar or someone like that. But
it's not. When you go back to when the IC was a prize where you would kind of win the IC on your way up. So like you got your Bret Harts, your Stone Colds, your Triple H's, and people like that, where the IC was a perfect springboard. I'm just saying that's the kind of thing that the women's roster needs.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
To push on to that level and feed people in and build them up so people want to see them go for the title a little bit more. But yeah, it's just an opinion, because you just saw a 30 women Royal Rumble. I was going to call it Battle Royal, a Royal Rumble, which stole the night, and they, to me, are starting to use them a lot better. So put them in prominent positions. They've got plenty of them to use. So let's start using the women properly, like they did not last night, but the night before.
Yeah. What they could do is sorry, Dom, Andy. Did they have a mid card belt on NXT?
Not for the women. They've got the North American Championship, but the women's have got the just the women's one, because at one point they got rid of the tag belts as well, didn't they? And then they had to kind of get them back a little bit. So yeah, it's like breakouts and stuff though.
Yeah. Sorry, Dom, you were saying that.
No, I think it's some really interesting points there, and obviously really appreciate everybody's views. Obviously, Sassy, our esteemed moderator over at Give Me a Hull, saying some of these talents shine on their own, which I think is a fantastic, statement on the WWE women's roster. AEW, of course, another great roster. Ring of Honor too. So it's a great time for women's wrestling, and I think that's the core of this conversation. And I'm sure we'll have many more over on our various different channels about the state of women's wrestling at the moment in terms of in-ring performance. You could say what you want, of course, about things outside of the ring, but inside of the ring, it is a great time for professional women's wrestling and in entertaining millions of people around the world. So that is, and again, some of these talents really do shine on their own. What a wonderful point there from Sassy. We're going to move on, guys, because there's a lot to talk about. And the next point is this: a predictable Roman Reigns win, lads. Was this ever going to be anything other than a Roman Reigns win? Did this do anything for Mr. Styles, who we see laying down there, having taken the pin? We know LA Knight is pretty much WrestleMania bound, probably against Logan Paul. We know Randy Orton is possibly due a singles run with Roman, and obviously not win that. But AJ Styles is a question here. What he does next, and more specifically, what the heck does Roman do, if anything, between now and WrestleMania, where Cody presumably, despite what Anthony over and Give Me a Hull will say, is finishing his bloody story. So yes, Sporsy, first, your thoughts on this Fatal 4-Way, please.
I'm going to keep this really short and sweet because I personally don't think it deserves much time. I was massively disappointed. It was a paint-by-numbers match that was predictable as anything you'll ever watch in wrestling, down to the Solo Sikoa interference, the partial ref bump. It was so predictable, and I just didn't like it. I think we've done a chat, myself and Sam, about Roman Reigns being the kind of like forgotten champion, and at this point it feels like the stat padding is his record, because they're just not making him work for it. And it's all well and good Michael Cole saying, like calling out the internet for kind of like being bored of it and saying someone's got to beat him. But what's the point? You just buried 3 of your stars on SmackDown in one go because it was just rubbish, like absolute drivel. This is why I can see people don't like WWE, because it's so predictable. Like they could have done anything to make this kind of have a little bit more of a change up. But I'm not going to say anymore, because as arrogant as it sounds, I just think it's such a waste of time to talk about. I'd rather talk about the US title. I'd rather talk about the men's Royal Rumble. I just think move on. It was boring. It was predictable. Done.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I echo all of your points there. While I think LA Knight has a clear run to WrestleMania, and while I think, Randy Orton will always have a place at the top of the card, I think AJ taking the pin, where does that leave him? And also, this was the most obvious match on the card, and that's what I have to say about it. So, Sam, your thoughts, please, on Roman Reigns retaining.
See, I'm going to defend it, and I'll tell you what. I agree with every word, by the way, every single word, especially with the whole Roman Reigns getting a bit boring and getting a bit predictable thing. We are at the point where we desperately need to get to WrestleMania now. I actually thought this is so goddamn predictable that they're going to have to swerve us in some way. They're going to have to, because if they don't, this is going to get torn apart on podcasts like this. But I will defend it in the fact that I don't think we've ever had a fatal 4-way with Roman as champion. I'm glad they bloody didn't stack the bodies, because that would have been another one hell of a burial, even more so. But I'm of the view we're here with what the hell else do they do at this point? Because it's disrespectful for Roman Reigns to lose that belt after such a run anywhere other than Roman Reigns at Mania. For him to lose the belt other than anywhere but Mania. So he was never losing it here. So I appreciate that they tried to do something new. But yeah, the ref bump, the Solo Sikoa thing. It was the Anthony after WrestleMania, while we were all going home, said the Roman Reigns matches are getting a little bit boring now. And at that point, I didn't really agree. I was like, you know what? I kind of like the psychology. I kind of like this Roman Reigns style of match. So I've got a few more in me. But by the time we got past Sami Zayn and to LA Knight and to this, now I'm like, oh, guys, this needs taking out like old Yeller and shooting. I do think there's story to tell. And what they should have done here is done that. Made some story. They should have overbooked it somewhat and had some more stories to tell, maybe with the Usos, maybe with Sami Zayn, maybe try to circle back to some of these amazing storylines that have happened over the past couple of years, and they didn't. And like, I do feel like all three stars who lost can take it. I think all three of them are big enough stars to bounce back, and in next week we just won't care. But yeah, it was by the numbers. I enjoyed the match. I didn't think it was a terrible match, but I think all I can say in their defense is what else do they bloody do? They've got to spin the wheels somewhat, and this was a classic case of spinning the wheels. I just enjoy that I got to see all four of these guys in the ring at once. I've never seen that before. I'm into that. I will watch it again for that reason only. But in terms of the storyline thing, everybody rolling their eyes, including you, Andy. I'm with you. I hear you. We've got a couple of months to go.
It's laziness is what I'm saying, because a few years back we had that amazing triple threat match. Was it John Cena, Seth Rollins, and Brock or Roman?
Oh yeah.
And that was one of the best triple threat matches you'll ever see. And that was on the Royal Rumble card. Here, there was two options they could have had for me to make that better in terms of how they showcase people. And that that at the moment WWE are more self-aware than they've ever been, in the sense of like they are definitely paying attention to social media. They're definitely paying attention to reports and things. Why did they not have it? So Roman, because people are getting bored of the same shenanigans every time, why not have it that Roman just wins clean? Make him have the dominant victory. Make him make everyone remember why he's the record champion, because instead of being protected and having like the same like bloodline interference, why don't we instead have Roman just absolutely smash them and maybe not stack them, but have them absolutely laid out? Or maybe he plays that sort of chicken SHIT heel and he just doesn't get involved in the match, lets the other three put on an absolute classic, effectively triple threat match, and then comes in at the end and steals the victory. That's something different they've not done. It was the dynamic was completely wrong, because to me, they've spent the entire build-up saying like Roman Reigns is never here. One of us has got to like take the title. It's going to be me. It's going to be me. It's going to be me. And then they just let Roman just be a normal part of the match. Well, why didn't they just take him out? They could have laid him through the announce table early on, like make sure he's out the way, have the match between themselves. It just seemed very sloppy and lazy. Whereas they could have given us something a little bit different, or re-established Roman is the dominant champion for this reason. And
I love that.
You all think that Cody's going to win it, but here's the Roman Reigns you've all been wanting to see. He's just dominated three of the biggest superstars, because that's what they did anyway in the end, is having him win. So, yeah, I just think they have an opportunity to do something different, and they fumbled.
There is one thing we haven't twigged, none of us, and that's Roman was in this position because he tried getting out of a match with Randy. This was Nick Aldis is basically deliberately screwing him over. And Nick Aldis is the good guy in this story because Roman is the bad guy. But could this be part of...
They're having a match. They are, I think once the match is gone, I think they've done such a good job of introducing Nick Aldis as an authority figure to get you and the rest of the WWE universe who maybe isn't au fait with Nick Aldis. They've introduced him so well, and that he will stand up for what he believes in. That when the time comes and he takes his suit off and he's ripped to pieces and he actually is a brilliant technical wrestler, people be like, "Oh damn! Like this is going to be a good match." And they don't. Do that. So for me, it's a good build. So I saw where you're going with that. I 100% agree. It's coming after WrestleMania, maybe like a SummerSlam or like a B1 to kind of build it up. But I think it's coming.
Yeah. I'm psyched for that because and you've interviewed Nick Aldis, I do believe, Dom, on this channel.
Yes, indeed, absolutely. Nick was talked to me for a very long time. He had a lot to say about his time with NWA, with TNA as well. Go back and watch that. It's one of my favorites I've ever done. Actually, Nick was a true gentleman. So go and check that out. I do want to move forward, but very briefly, lads, I'd like you to briefly comment on Tammy's comment here. And the question to come from that, I guess, is Roman should be on a card if they can get him on a card, right? Because he's a star.
Yes.
And he is the star. So giving him the night off, to me doesn't make good business sense. But they could have probably just had him there on camera raising.
He should have been at Survivor Series. He should have been at Survivor Series. He should be on all of the big ones, the big four. Like, yeah, it's hard to when people are going, oh, he's not turning up for work, and then we say, oh, he should turn up to work even less. Now we need him there. And it's one final thing about this match before we go anywhere else. We did have a moment that was really, really good where all three of the baby faces, and I do still consider AJ a babyface, all just kind of went like this at one point and looked at Roman and then just came at him. And I thought, yes, this is clever. This is what anyone would do. But because baby faces are stupid, historically, in WWE, they all then just went, yeah, started hitting each other like toddlers. And I was like, I'm not being funny. It should have been Randy going. Another good booking in that match would have been the three of them. It's like you kind of said, Andy. They either should have put Roman over and reminded us why he's so powerful, or they should have had the three of them absolutely brutalize Roman to the point where he's not a factor, and then the other three have a proper good match, and then him squirrely steal it at the end, despite still being broken in half from the other three. The fact that AJ just started spontaneously hitting LA Knight before they were done with Roman made me just shout and go, what are you doing?
I think they're setting something up, aren't they, between AJ and Knight pre-Mania, so that could be that. But yeah, I think the general vibe is that this was predictable and possibly one of the misses of this card. Moving on to what I believe was, the only singles match, but again, a good candidate for match of the night if we're not talking about Rumble, which is becoming a running theme with Mr. Paul, is KO and Logan Paul as match of the night. And that's a question, obviously, outside of the Rumbles. So, guys, I mean, this was a banger. Kevin Owens looked great, as Kevin Owens is wont to do. Logan Paul, whether you like him or not, did a fantastic job. So, taking into account that we're going to see Logan and Knight at Mania, that's almost a lock-in, so LA Knight can get his WrestleMania moment. Kevin Owens here, cracking. Logan Paul, cracking performance. What did you guys think of this? Let's go with Sam to start on this one.
Yeah, I loved the match. I thought the finish was very clever. The referee, it's very within Kevin Owens' character for him to be so furious with the whole injustice of the thing. He thinks about punishing Logan before he thinks about the actual winning the belt, and that became clear at the end as well, where he kind of smirked as he left the ring, almost like, yeah, it was worth it to beat the ever-living you-know-what out of this guy. That mattered more to me. I thought that was kind of on point for KO. He is the second coming of Stone Cold Steve Austin. There's one thing I am getting sick of seeing in the Logan Paul matches, which is, who is this random guy called? Is it Jeff, who just appears out of nowhere? Who the hell is Jeff?
Who is Jeff?
Does it not make more sense, right? So whoever the hell Jeff is, can we forget Jeff? Couldn't have this been... I know Theory and Grayson Waller came out afterwards, and I do like the idea of the smarmy little trio of the three of them. I think that's quite cool. But rather than having Jeff, can we just have someone like Theory? Let's have it put over a member of the roster, not Jeff. No more Jeff, please, WWE. Other than Jeff, it was great.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was fantastic. Kevin Owens looked fantastic. I'm interested to see what KO does Obviously, KO has had a number of WrestleMania moments over the last few years, and I would be sad to see him not have one. Obviously, we're talking about what we do with Logan Paul. We're talking about what we do with AJ Styles at WrestleMania. Names that deserve to be on that card. Kevin Owens is front and center, top of the list of people that should have something to do at WrestleMania. So I'm very keen to see what they do with KO. Logan Paul, fantastic. I might want to, and I'm sure this is the way the world feels about Logan Paul, but actually, pretty talented businessman. Actually, quite clever, very savvy, and also an incredible in-ring performer, if I'm being objective, and that is what we are here to do on Wrestlesphere. Logan Paul is a standout performer across the roster, and this was another demonstration of that. He is the perfect heel. I can't think of a better one outside of Roman and obviously the heels that have been around for a long time. Logan Paul is a new injection of heel heat to WWE. Has been fantastic, and this was the right call as we head into WrestleMania season, keeping that belt on Logan with his smarmy entourage as well, because it makes you dislike him even more. Sporzy, your thoughts, please.
He's just gone for a drink. He's just grabbing a
drink. He's here.
Oh, he's here.
He's here. I'm watching the bottom of the screen, Sam.
Oh, good. Oh, cool. I can't see. I haven't got editorial rights on this
one. Okay. That was my fault. I was about to lay into you for not being professional, but actually...
No, I'm just here as a guest. That's why I'm not doing any comment work.
It's on me, isn't it? There we go.
Yeah, it's all on you, mate. Yeah.
So, Sporzy, are you... do you want to comment on this? Did this excite you? I feel like you might have something to say on KO and Logan Paul and the positioning on the card.
When we were talking about this over on Scott's channel, Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling, shout out to those guys who do a lot of the sort of like pre-show stuff. I was talking about match card and how Triple H likes to kind of like have a bit of a ebbs and flows throughout. I had this as the one that would go on before the men's Rumble. I thought on the card it was well positioned. It had some great spots, but I definitely wouldn't call it match of the night. I appreciate outside the Rumble, it's slim pickings because there's only the two matches, and the other one was, as we just talked about, was a bit predictable, very predictable. I thought the ending they absolutely nailed though, because it made sure that Kevin Owens still looked strong. And normally I'm not a big fan of like DQ finishes, but the way it kind of played out was perfect for Logan Paul. They really kind of like made sure you want to see him get his comeuppance at some point, and that's really it. Like the way they've built him and the way he's built himself. He himself is a very millennial 2024 up with the kind of times, but the way that he is acting, he's a traditional heel. He knows what is going to get like kind of the cheap heat where he'll like call out like some shots at whichever town they're in, and he'll kind of act that kind of heelish and very much I'm better than you sort of like Mr. Perfect thing. And it's clever because it's keeping it basic. And I mean that in the nicest sense possible, because as Sam said earlier on, sometimes you need to keep it simple, and less is more. And with Logan Paul, because of all the other stuff he brings with him, he's going to have that heat already. Sprinkling in that old school heel vibe of like, I'm just going to kind of like say some like sort of nasty things and poke at people being fat like Kevin Owens, etc. It's cheap, but it works. Like that's all you have to do sometimes. Like you don't have to go digging too deep. And he can back it up in the ring. And like some people find that hellishly frustrating because there are people in life that just seemingly are very good at everything, but are complete and utter douchebags. And he's one of those people. And the whole storyline with Logan Paul, and as I think Sassy's kind of saying, oh, hell no, is you want to see him lose. He's doing his job. You want to see him
get beaten up.
And now my attention goes to, I want to see him lose on the biggest stage. So send him into WrestleMania as the champion and then get that belt off of him and let someone experience that big pop for being the one who gets the title off of him.
Beats and humiliates him. And just draw attention.
It should be LA Knight.
Yes. Yeah, just to draw attention to he's a very different champion to Gunther, who's very much a guy who can back it up, doesn't need to be a chicken shit, doesn't need to do any of that. And it's both of them with the IC in the United States, they've both titles feel relevant again. Both feel like a big deal. Like recently, they felt like a bigger deal than the other two, in some extent. You know, but oh God, he's great. I want to see him get beaten and humiliated, and I want to see it happen at WrestleMania, and that's because he's doing such a great job in his role.
He is absolutely, and I can't wait to see Mr. Knight have his WrestleMania moment, and Logan Paul will be the perfect foil, the perfect antagonist for LA Knight's protagonist and moment. Moving on to the Rumble, what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to dissect certain moments, and then what I'm going to do at the end is I'm going to ask you to pick on things that I might have missed, things that you would like to mention as highlights for the Rumble. Like I say, I want to be very, very clear. The Women's Rumble was probably the best I've ever seen and far eclipsed the Men's Rumble, but there are some talking points to bring up, so we will go through those. The first one is Jey Uso as the Iron Man, and the longest, I believe, in this Rumble, and if not, well, certainly close to it, and also a star-making performance. People talk about main event Jey Uso, obviously pictured here. That's how we started the Rumble. A lot of people go, oh, we've seen this before. Oh, I've had enough of this. But actually, this was a nice spin on it. Both of the Usos had decent terms, but Jey particularly was given the reins, no pun intended, to run with, and to really excel and show that he is not a perpetually mid-card star. So that's one of the things I wanted to bring up, guys. How did you feel about Jey Uso's performance in the Rumble specifically? Let's go with Spalsy first on this one.
Yeah, I mean, they gave him that the number one spot, and then having this moment, with Jimmy as number two, it gave it an intriguing start. And I know some people are a little bit kind of, Jimmy was proper hammy with his like facial expressions, was maybe putting a bit too much into it. But for anyone who's got a big brother or has a brother and you're maybe the big brother, how many times have you kind of like been squaring up or like having like a bit of a play fight or a fight or whatever, and you want to make yourself look like you remember who the bigger person is here? And Jimmy, I believe, is the elder brother who was just doing that whole like, I'm going to psych you out. And I think that's what that was kind of about. But this laid the ground, I think, for these two to have a match at WrestleMania. Like, we got to see a little bit of it here. We got to see Jimmy kind of try and make some false like alliances or pretend alliances, and then quickly people were like, "Nah, not having any of that because you're associated with Bloodline, etc." But for Jey, yeah, I think they're doing a good job of building him up and trying to make you forget that he, is probably more renowned for his tag team matches. So I thought they did a good job. I wish they maybe had sprinkled in a couple more eliminations for him or something and put him in some more prominent spots. But certainly making him the Iron Man and the number one was a couple of good options to go down.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, your thoughts on Jey here? Did it excite you for the future of Jey Uso?
Yeah, but I enjoyed it that they were one and number two. I thought it was a little bit predictable, but I didn't really mind. I thought Jimmy was actually overly heelish, personally. I actually think that it would have been nice if there had been some, almost some remorse, some regret. Like, no, I did what I had to do, and I don't regret it. I was kind of hoping they'd do a moment where they'd be like fighting each other, and then they'd have to fight someone else, and they'd both dual super kick that person, just alluding to the fact that we probably should be together, but now we're walking different paths. And then they look at each other, they have that moment of recognition, and then they go at each other again. I thought that would have been nice, because let's be honest, they are going to ride again. They are going to be reunited at some point. But before they do, it'd be a wasted opportunity to not have them face one another before they do that. This is wrestling. It's got to happen. But yeah, that's my only other criticism. With Jey, I don't know. I don't really know where they go. For me, the story is more about how do the two of them find their way back to each other, and how do the two of them take down Roman Reigns, or how do they factor into that story more than it is about either one of them becoming a solo star? Because I think they've done that fine, but for me, they'll always be associated with that. And I'm not clamoring for Jey Uso to hold one of those belts and stand on his own 2 feet. I'm clamoring for a good story, and I think that involves his brother. But that's just me.
Dom, let me ask you a question. Do you see this as a Hardy Boys, where like Jeff and Matt went their separate ways, and Jeff actually became, quite prominently popular as a singles competitor? Capturing the IC belt, he got the world heavyweight championship at one point. Do you see any kind of comparables here?
I hope not, for Jimmy's sake. There have been
I can see Matt Hardy in that situation.
Yes. I mean, that's no bad thing, of course. Matt Hardy is a world champion, in his own right. But if I was to pick one, if I was to pick who was the Jeff in that, it's Jey. And he's been positioned by, it's all positioning. It's all how the company sees you. Jeff Hardy was as big as Jeff Hardy was because WWE saw that in him. It could have been Matt Hardy. It wasn't to be. And I believe the same could be said. It could easily be Jimmy. It could have easily been Jimmy by now. Jimmy could be where Jey is. But Jey has been positioned as such. Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, the same thing. Say what you want about Marty Jannetty, he was just as good at that time. And technically, maybe not on the microphone, but they could have done the same thing with Marty Jannetty. It's possible. So I think, yes, I think it's all positioning, and I think Jey is the Jeff here. Yes, absolutely. And I hope because Jimmy's so good. I hope that he is given something, equivalent to, if not eclipsing, Matt Hardy in WWE. Does Jimmy go on to be a TNA world champion multiple times in the future? Maybe. Who knows? But Jey Uso will be a WWE world champion before his career is over. And WWE have positioned it. They have made it so. That is all it is.
All right, Picard.
WWE have made it so. But yeah, I mean, obviously that is just one talking point from this stuffed Rumble. I am going to say something quite controversial here, and I'm going to address this. It's the Andrade return. It wasn't what it could have been. Andrade does not do it for me. I am sorry. El Idolo, I appreciate his talent. I appreciate how good he is in the ring. There's something missing for me personally as a fan. I'm not saying I can't be swayed. Somewhere down the line, I felt this fell flat. There's rumors that he has a place on Raw tonight, and I hope that he is well received because he deserves to be well received because of his talent. But for me personally, and this is why I'm moving on to you guys quickly, it fell flat for me that R-Truth's turn in the Women's Royal Rumble got more out of me than Andrade's return did, but that is just me. I welcome people's comments to the contrast. So I will take it to Sporsy first. I realise I keep bringing up pictures when I ask Andy to speak. It's not because I don't like the look of you. I actually think you're the best looking of the three of us. Andrade in the Rumble, Sporsy, your thoughts, please.
That was perfect timing. You just said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'd do it," and then did it anyway. It's really interesting with Andrade because I kind of feel when you go back and you think of like, oh, who's come across and done like a great job in terms of like that sort of Latino, Hispanic sort of backgrounds. And once upon a time you had Del Rio. Was never a big fan of Del Rio. Then Andrade came along, and I thought he was so much better than Del Rio ever was. And now,
absolutely, he's better than Andrade.
Then what I'm going to say is it's evolved on, and now I personally think you've got Santos Escobar, who is another evolution on Andrade. And we've all spoken to him, and he is so eloquent. He looks a superstar. He's brilliant in the ring, and I saw a backstage interview with Andrade where they were like, "Oh, how's it feel to be home and stuff?" And like, I was like, I'm just even bored by this 30-second interview because you're not really like engaging me. Like, give me a reason, because he had a fantastic few matches down in NXT. The match at Portland against Johnny Gargano was an absolute banger and one of the best NXT matches you'll ever see. But my thoughts when he came back was a few seconds of, "Oh, that's cool. Like, he looks amazing. He looks stacked as well." Like, you can tell when someone's not been in WWE for a while because they come back and they're like ripped to pieces, like have that kind of like triangle figure, and you're like, cool. Then they travel for a little bit and they don't have as much chance to work out maybe and stuff, and it kind of like, you know, and whatever. But then after about a minute, I was like, okay, and now what? What do you do with Andrade? Like, where does he go? Because if you're going to put someone in his position, I'd rather you push Santos.
Yes, yeah, I'm going to come back in here, and it's not because he was so lovely to all of us when we met him as part of the press stuff. He is a star, and I saw them in the ring. It was like the Spider-Man thing, you know, and I was like, okay, you know, Santos does Andrade better than Andrade. Do you know what I mean? That the ego, the heel persona, all of it is done better, in my opinion, than Santos is just the this is going to sound really harsh, and I'm not one for doing this very often, but I do believe Santos is the better version of Andrade.
100%. But there is a spot for Andrade, and this, again, I don't mean this to be condescending. Keep him away from SmackDown because you've got Santos there. If you have him on Raw, that's fine. Maybe you want to do something with where you make a power couple with Charlotte when she comes back, because we all know about that situation. Or personally, I would love to see Andrade versus Ilya Dragunov down on NXT. I think that would be a great match.
Give me that. Yeah.
Go give him some like time on NXT, because that was where he thrived before he had a chance to go, because I just don't see where he fits in apart from there. And that's not a bad thing. NXT's doing great things. Everyone knows my love for NXT. And I think he would thrive in that position at the moment.
I agree. Sticking back on NXT, and I hope he thrives. I hope he thrives. I want to be proven wrong about Andrade, because he is good. He is good. There are, you know what I mean. Push Santos. You know, give me Santos in main event angles. But yeah. Let's see. Let's let Andrade cook, as the kids say. Sam, your thoughts, please, on Andrade's return.
Yeah, my favorite Andrade was him with Zelina Vega in NXT, facing McIntyre. You know, that right there was my favorite version of that, where she kept on addressing Drew as Drew, which was brilliant. But yeah, like when he went to AEW. I actually felt really, really good, because I thought because they brought in Roosh and they brought in Dragon Lee, so they reunited the Los Ingobernables stable from CMLL.
Well done.
Yeah,
I could never pronounce that.
And but I struggled with it with the Del Japón at the end when Naito does it over in New Japan. But basically, they had a version of that stable in Ring of Honor, and then they had a version of that stable in AEW, which is the evolved form of the Ring of Honor one. And I thought, this is great. This is exactly what they need to do with that stable in the West. This is like Mexico's Bullet Club in the West. They've nailed it, and where they can pull that off in AEW. And then it all just kind of went to shit. And part of me is actually disappointed to see him back in WWE, because I feel like I've been deprived of that. And at the same time, like once he came back, I was like, but I feel like you fit in even less here. That's my fear. Now, I don't know what to do with him. I kind of like the Charlotte Power Flare. The Power Flare? Yeah, let's call them that. The Power Flare couple. But yeah, I share your concerns about where you put him, especially when like he's a great worker, but he doesn't have an inch of the charisma of Santos. So they need to do something here. And it was fun that he kind of rejected Santos in the ring. So he's clearly going to be a babyface here, while Santos is going to be the heel, which he's probably better suited to be. Do they get him a mouthpiece? Do they make him a prize fighter? Get him a mouthpiece. and make a situation where he just comes out, smirks, and beats people up. But if that's the case, they need to keep him far away from the LWO, far away from Legado del Fantasma, and do something different.
I was going to suggest a Zelina Vega heel turn and then reuniting, because I do think he could do with a mouthpiece right now, and maybe Charlotte Flair is that for him somewhere.
Or
down
Elektra
the line.
Lopez.
Yeah,
well, Elektra Lopez has just joined up with Santos, hasn't she?
Yeah.
There is, if they were sent to NXT, you've also got Lola Vice, and Lola Vice can talk pretty well.
Yeah, she's amazing.
And you got that kind of, maybe there's a connection that could be had there. But yeah, I like the idea of him. It maybe enticing Zelina away from the LWO and giving her a bit of a storyline, because it'd be nice for her to have something to go on as well.
I think so. Yeah, maybe this can be a way to create opportunities for other people. Talking about opportunities that happened to other people, from what I've read from various sources, I want to highlight some particularly good showings for Carmelo Hayes and Bron Breakker, particularly Bron, who was gifted this opportunity for all we've read with the absence of one Brock Lesnar. So Bron Breakker in this Royal Rumble, I have traditionally not been the biggest fan of his. I'm not, me, I'm more for, cruiserweights flying around and weird storytelling, spooky stuff. But Bron Breakker is the wrestler's wrestler. He is, from a wrestling family, and he absolutely smashed this. He was given a mammoth task, and apparently elimination for elimination. Brock Lesnar's movements in this Rumble, and I thought he did a cracking job. Carmelo Hayes as well did a fantastic job in this. NXT is arguably in the best position it's been for a number of years, lads. And I wanted to get your thoughts on these two standouts in the Rumble. They do it every year, bringing people in, but this feels important for these two. Bron Breakker and Carmelo Hayes specifically. I feel like there is a lot of weight on their shoulders, and I feel like they're more than capable of carrying it. Let's start with Sam on this and then move to Andy. Your thoughts on Bron and Carmelo in the Rumble?
Yeah, like Braun coming out reminded me of Goldberg in the 2017 Rumble, where he just came out, killed everyone, eliminated Brock Lesnar before getting eliminated himself. It was just ace. But this was just as good. He came out and just annihilated everyone. And if you didn't know who he was before today, you bloody well do now. Shame he got evicted. It's not Big Brother. Shame he got kicked out a little bit, a bit too soon, in my opinion. But yeah, it was a great showing. He woke me up again when he came in, you know what I mean? He made it exciting again. Hayes looks good. Like Carmelo Hayes looks excellent no matter what he does. I'm a bit disappointed Trick Williams wasn't in the Rumble as well, because I thought it would have been nice to show them not be on the same page, because we predict Melo is turning heel at Vengeance Day against Trick, and it would have been nice to kind of allude to NXT a little bit more in the Rumble. So when Carmelo got kicked out, I was like, oh, well, that's a wasted opportunity. So I feel like Breakker had a better showing than Hayes, but they're clearly high on both these two guys, and I look forward to seeing what they do next.
Yeah, absolutely. Sporsy, your thoughts on that? Because you're an NXT guy, aren't you? Traditionally, you love your NXT. So your thoughts on these two?
Yeah, they've been long heralded as this kind of the two future stars of WWE, and they're kind of like the shining jewels, I guess, for one day being the faces of WWE, and that's kind of long been the point. And myself, I've always, I don't know, I've been drawn more to the coolness of Carmelo Hayes, very slick in the ring, rather than Bron Breakker. There's been some sort of disconnect for me where I don't know, I've never really kind of fully bought into it, but I thought they did a fantastic job of presenting who he is in the amount of time that he had. And I guess to be given the spot that Brock potentially might have had, like we'll never, I guess, like 100% know if that's true, but we get a good inkling that it was, because the manner of the way that he did the eliminations was very similar. I would like to point out what I did find hilarious of it. If everything matched up, the idea that Dom would have eliminated Brock is absolutely fantastic. And there's a lot of criticism about there wasn't enough moments, maybe wasn't enough surprises. And I feel like that's one of those that we were maybe robbed of, because if at the end you were talking, oh my God, Dominic Mysterio just eliminated Brock Lesnar, that's a moment. And like that's they play forever and ever, because it feels amazing. So that's why I think his elimination didn't mean as much, because Dominic Mysterio getting Bron Breakker out doesn't have anywhere near the kind of kudos. But I take the point of, like, you know, he did well, but his spear is a throwback to when spears actually looked like they hurt, like Goldberg's kind of spears. Yeah. But I'd argue that he snaps into them even more than Goldberg used to, in a way that it makes it look like, you would be cut in half. And like I remember, like when Dolph Ziggler went down to NXT and got the championship, he took a couple of spears, and everyone knows how well Dolph can sell. And my God, he just made that move look absolutely legit. But Carmelo Hayes, I think he's been doing a better job over on SmackDown of showcasing how good a wrestler he is, putting him in with like Austin Theory and that. But what I was quite surprised about, I know it's not the Rumble, but it was in the build-up, Sam, on SmackDown, Trick Williams came out, who the SmackDown audience has no business knowing. My God, he got a massive pop, and they were doing his trick.
Trick. That's what made me think he was going to be in the Rumble. So when he wasn't in the Rumble, I was like, what was the point of that then? So like when he came out on that episode of SmackDown, the crowd were chanting, "Whoop that trick." I remember being like, right, oh my God, we're getting these two in the Rumble, which means we're going to get a moment. And then they didn't. So I was like, but we got that bloody McAfee spot.
He's got a massive Saturday next week, or this week, sorry, because you've got Vengeance Day, which we'll be covering. We'll be doing a preview show, spoiler alert, for people on Friday. That's the idea. On if you come join us on Wrestling Royalty, we'll be streaming on Give It Hell Yeah as well. But if you want to have a preview of Vengeance Day, we'll be doing that. Trick Williams has got a massive weekend, so maybe that's why they saved him not being in the Rumble, because they'd already had that standoff going. What are you doing? We've got the tag tournament final, the Dusty Rhodes tournament next Saturday, so stop messing around on SmackDown. So maybe that's why, because it's easy to justify Carmelo Hayes doing his heel turn where he's like, I need something, because that's the only thing I'd say. They've maybe kept these two in NXT about 6 months too long, because you could have pushed them into the main roster a little bit earlier, but maybe the Rumble was the perfect time for Bron. Carmelo, you've been doing it a different way. They are introducing them at last, but that would be my only thing, was it's a long time coming, and let's get them on to the main roster now. And I think there's reports that Bron has been calling out the Judgment Day already. So good one.
It's an exciting time, absolutely, guys. I was gonna gloss over this one in the interest of time, but no, I'm gonna bring it in. Because I think, and I haven't got a picture of him, but he doesn't need an introduction. He doesn't need a picture. I want to discuss Pat McAfee, and R-Truth's comedy turns at the Rumble, and particularly R-Truth's renaissance. The R-Truth renaissance that we have seen in recent weeks. But this lovely little moment, which I did get a shot of, Pat McAfee joining the Rumble and then not joining the Rumble anymore. Your thoughts on the comedy value of R-Truth coming to the Women's Rumble and then coming back, and then also Pat McAfee's turn, the comedy of Royal Rumble 2024, lads. Start with Sporzy. And then move on to Sam.
I think this picture, again, this is another one where you could tell it was supposed to be Brock instead of Bron, because if you think the visual of Pat trying to get in the ring when you got Omos and Brock just stood there works a bit more than with Bron. That's the only kind of downside to him coming in that position, because yes, he'd snap you in half with a spear, but give me the visual of Brock and Omos staring down at each other and then realizing there's this kind of like slightly goofy announcer coming in and then eliminating himself, because most people in that situation would do it. But I thought Pat's turn on commentary was fantastic. He really kind of people maybe had a bit of an issue. Like one of my mates was saying they don't like the whole, you can tell Pat's not been keeping up with the product, but it almost felt like an outsider coming in and having to learn about it, but also just being quite natural in commenting like, oh, that person's a beast, that person's a machine, like, or such and such. So it kind of worked in that sense. But R-Truth, I'll let Sam do the kind of like the majority of talking, but the the spot of the hot tag with Dom was so well done. And I think the Rumble needs bits like that. Like it's a long tune because it's at least an hour long. You need bits where like you can get a different reaction to, someone that we were really excited for came out, or like a high spot. But like giving those comedy spots, and R-Truth at the moment is just on fire in terms of getting reactions, and that hot tag was fantastic. But yeah, I'll hand over to Sam to delve a little bit deeper on R-Truth.
Okay, this might be controversial. I've never really been a fan of R-Truth. I've never really found him funny. However, recently with this whole Judgment Day thing, he has been popping me a hell of a lot, and I absolutely howled at him coming out in the Women's Rumble and going, "Where are all the guys?" That that line delivered the way it was delivered, really, like me and Jess did laugh out loud at that. So at this moment, I do need him away from the Judgment Day soon, because I want them to look like killers, and them getting like, it has been funny, it has been entertaining, but if they stay connected with him for so long, it's going to ruin their aura. So, but yeah, I was never into the little Jimmy stuff or any of that. I fast forwarded it, and I want to forget the 24/7 championship ever happened. But yeah, I am feeling R-Truth at the moment, and yeah, the hot tag thing was quite funny, especially when JD McDonough. Was it JD McDonough, or was it no, it was Mysterio, who when Mysterio actually played along and did indeed tag him, because he was that desperate. That was quite funny. With the Pat McAfee thing, I hated it at the time. Now, realizing it was meant to be Brock in there makes it make a lot more sense. But it for me, I felt like they kind of wasted a spot on it. I didn't think it was entertaining. I was like, "What are you doing? What you do?" Like, it might have made a bit more sense if Brock and Omos had snarled at him and him going, nah, mate, sorry, nah. But he didn't need to eliminate himself. All he had to do was just hang out and wait. And it kind of buried him a bit, because let's not forget, McAfee is a wrestler as well. And McAfee has been in some quite sinister storylines as a heel stable leader against in NXT, against Adam Cole, and then he's been involved in some other good stuff as a more heroic figure later on against Austin Theory and people like that. So for him now to go and be this, it just kind of felt like it cheapened some of the previously good stuff he has done. So I personally think after Brock wasn't going to be here anymore, they probably should have got rid of that moment and given that spot to somebody else who could have put on more of a show. There's a lot of people on the roster we didn't get to see, like Otis, like Chad Gable, people like that. I kind of missed those two people in this Rumble, and a bunch of others. And I would have preferred, I'm fine with comedies. The Rumble is a variety show and lots of stuff needs to happen. We need to laugh, we need to cry. But I wasn't a fan of that McAfee moment. But R-Truth, yeah, I'm feeling it.
Yeah, it was a lovely bit of comedy, and I'm all for Truth. There's actually a Q&A I did with Truth about 2 years ago over on Soundsphere, which I'm very proud of, because he talks about his music. He's a bit of an entrepreneur, is Truth. He does a bit of everything, so go and check that out, because he's a humble guy. Is R-Truth. Moving on to the final 2 points before we round up tonight's stream. Once again, thank you for those that have joined us, and thank you for those that join us afterwards. I think we can't not talk about Cody finishing the story. Obviously, Cody winning back to back. This felt like the right choice. I can't really say anything else. I think Cody is the right man to lead WWE through a very difficult period. And when I say difficult period, I mean behind the scenes. I think he's the right face for the company going into the next year. And obviously the TKO stuff and the all that thing. I think Cody is a quality face for the company and deserves this absolutely, and should be the person to beat Roman. I can't really say anything more than that, lad. That's my take on it. It was the right call, and I will fight anybody that says it wasn't. Cody needs to finish the story. Let's start with Sam on this point and then move to Andy.
I'm going to be brief for once, and I'm going to join you, mate. Yep, I think it was the right call. I feel like they had the final six with the right final six. For me, that's when things really got interesting in this Rumble. Once Sami Zayn came out and we had everybody, because let's not forget last year it was Cody and Sami who were the big two. This year it's Punk and Cody. So it was nice to see all of that honoured, and Priest in there, Gunther in there. Yeah, it just felt right, felt good. But ultimately, when it became down to the final two, as in Cody and Punk, I actually didn't mind who won, because now I know things are a little bit up in the air with Punk and Rollins at this moment in time, but until WWE tell us that match is either happening or off, I'm not going to read too much into any dirt sheet stuff. But yeah, in terms of Cody winning, the thing that made it especially good is he wasted zero time in looking right at Roman Reigns and going, you. And then Roman getting all insecure, and then the whole "it's over" thing, fantastic. Then he pointed at the sign, and we saw the Liberty Bell and the fireworks, and now it's real, boys and girls. Yeah, I'm into it. I'm fine with it. And do you know what? It's cool that we had somebody win 2 years in a row. It makes sense. If they're top of the card, it makes sense. We've done it before. And let's be honest, they told us it was happening by reminding us so many times that people can win two times in a row. The minute they did that, the writing was on the wall. Because I actually, going back a few months, I didn't think Cody was going to win a second one. I thought Punk would probably win this. But then I had a word of myself and I thought, hang on a minute, Punk's only been back in the company 5 minutes. They've had this planned long-term booking. And I thought to myself, the more I thought, it's Cody. He's winning again. Here we are. So I like being right. So thanks, Cody.
Yeah, absolutely. Cody is the golden boy. Again, no pun intended. I think it's fantastic that he's in this position. Sporsy, your thoughts, please, on Cody.
Yeah, again, you were with me on Scott's stream on Saturday night before the Rumble, and I'd already said it had to be Cody. Like, it had to be. Like, any logical thought process, people should have been able to figure it out. I'm also getting a little bit frustrated at seeing people on X or social media going, it's only because CM Punk got injured at the end.
No,
that's not how things work at all. As Sam said, they have to plan things in advance. Maybe they have plan B and plan C in case something goes wrong. But certainly from the perspective of, they've been telling you 2K24 that's coming. The whole slogan is finish the story. Here is my story. This is your story. They've been telling you the last time was Stone Cold in the 90s was a double winner. And before that, you had, was it Shawn Michaels? And you had before that was Hulk Hogan. And they drip these things in to plant it that this is a possibility. And as soon as he lost last year, to me, it was how do we get to that story? Like, again, how does he finish his story? That's what they're telling you to think about. And from a logistics point of view, him winning the Rumble was the only non-messy way they could have done it. Because how would you explain to get him across? Also, on the other side of the coin, CM Punk was never going to win the Rumble. How would it look from a perspective of a guy comes back after 10 years of slagging the company off? Like, we've been told that by Seth Rollins, to then put him in a position where he effectively wins the second most important match of the entire calendar over 30 other people.
Generate heat, though. Generate heat.
But it's the wrong kind of heat from the morale perspective, because then people are sat backstage going, like, Drew McIntyre could legitimately go, I bust my ass week in, week out. I want spots, and you're going to give it to this guy of everyone. Like, I get it from they pushed it as far as they could in the sense of he was the penultimate person. He was the last to be eliminated. I agree with that. And they put him in a position where he should have been. And now his story, it depends how accurate these injuries speculation is. His story now, his one should have been, how do I get myself to that place where I've wanted to be, which is a main event at WrestleMania? Now his story has to be, can I be fit enough to do that? So there was another thing that would have held against is like, he is in, the twilight of his career now. He's picking up injuries. His body's not going to be like as easy on him as it once was, and he's been around for a long time in terms of like indies and WWE's original run, and then across to AEW and back again. So they told a great story, and to me, it had to be Cody. Like there was no other choice. The interesting point now is we live in a day and age where baby faces don't hang around before the crowd turns on them. You've now given someone a back-to-back Rumble win. We often have people go, John Cena was the chosen one. He was gifted everything, and they turned on him. Seth Rollins gets every opportunity, and people turned on him. People turned on Roman. The hard thing they're going to have here, and this is why I think they have to pull the trigger at WrestleMania. If you don't let Cody finish this story and get rid of that phrase for forever now, people will turn on him because he can only be a lovable loser for so long. He can only be a super babyface for so long. And they're in the end game now because the clock is ticking before people will start turning on Cody Rhodes. I'm telling you now.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So this is the time. This is the time for Cody to finish the story, lads. I mean, that my final point before we do the review comes into what we were talking about there, and especially given the talk that's happening around Raw this evening, and one Bill Phil, as he likes to call himself, having or not having a match at Mania. How do we get CM Punk to WrestleMania with Seth Rollins? Because I presume that's what they're doing and what they're planning. Not necessarily focusing too much on the injury because we don't know how, we don't know what the score is with that yet. But how do you do it? Is this an Elimination Chamber win? How do you get Phil Brooks to WrestleMania, guys? How does this work? So, Spalsy, you go first, and then Sam.
By the way, that was probably one of the cleanest pedigrees since Triple H was doing them. I know he used to do the Pepsi plunge off the top rope, but he nailed that pedigree. I think the Elimination Chamber, if we're going off the basis of it's not as bad as people are saying. Him winning the Elimination Chamber and legitimizing himself over some of the big movers and shakers would be the best play. Or you just have him become increasingly unhinged where he's trying to get the attention of Seth Rollins because presumably Seth's not going to wrestle till Mania potentially, which means he just needs to be trying to get as much attention as possible. Maybe you let him loose on the microphone a little bit more than he has been. You don't have to have him face off against someone every single week. But yeah, I think you've got to let him do what he does best and talk himself into that position. But it might have a time where he's got to prove that he can also go in the ring still and beat some of the kind of like the Jey Usos, the Gunthers, who've already kind of put their shot out there, maybe Drew McIntyre, Sami Zayn, etc. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how badly he's injured. I'd be pretty upset for him if he's going to miss it because I think he would have had a prominent position on the card, probably against Seth. Now it potentially hangs by a thread, unfortunately. So I think you're right. I think the Elimination Chamber would have done again a lot of the heavy lifting. But let's see with Dan Hargreaves on Give Me a Hell Yeah.
On Give Me a Hell Yeah tonight. Over on Give Me a Hell Yeah, go check it out. Sam, your way to get Punk to Mania, please.
So, well, first of all, I want to just get Punk to Raw and see what the doctor's saying and stuff. Because last week we were all worried about Rollins, and then we kind of breathed a sigh of relief when they kind of turned the fact that he's actually probably going to be all right into a story. And now we've got the same thing with Punk. Like if he needs some time to recover and he's going to miss Mania, okay, so be it. They could always just do this at SummerSlam and make this one a SummerSlam to remember. That works for me. But yeah, it should really be Mania. I think they could do it via Elimination Chamber. That's one route. That was a traditional route. But there's another way they could do it. They could now have a feud between him and McIntyre, and they could have him and McIntyre have a match in Perth. But if that's out the window due to his injury, then I don't know. Maybe they do that later on. But one thought is him and McIntyre fight over it until one of them wins it. Punk wins it, and it goes from there. But it all depends on his injury now. If it wasn't for that, I'd either do it by the Elimination Chamber or I'd do it by a feud with McIntyre at Elimination Chamber in a one-on-one match. That'd be money. That'd be huge. And then make Elimination Chamber perhaps for the United States, whoever faces Logan Paul maybe, or whoever faces Gunther. That is a way they could do it. I hate it when they do the Elimination Chamber for the belt itself, like they did last year. That just was lame. I'd much prefer it to be a way to take somebody on at Mania. I just feel like that has more stakes. But with Punk, I'm kind of not daring to dream, and I'm not jumping. Like, obviously he's got an injury, we know that's true. But like with Rollins, it might all work out. So I'm going to reserve judgment. I'm going to wait and see. Yeah, I think it's the Chamber, personally, or McIntyre or the Chamber. I think they're the two routes. Yeah.
I think McIntyre taking him up to the Chamber is good. And I think McIntyre and Punk was rumoured to be, launched anyway on Raw. So we'll have to see how that goes. Guys, I want to summarise today, in terms of honourable mentions, anything that we've missed. Obviously, we mentioned Dominic Mysterio having his, great heel turn. We mentioned we squeezed in R-Truth. Hell, I even thought Nia Jax was good as a launching pad for Jade Cargill here. Any honourable mentions from the card and in the Royal Rumble that you wanted to sort of shine a light on before we round up?
Tiffany Stratton,
excellent. Yep. She was one, and that again, as the camera pan to.
Toodles.
Yeah, she was great. Tiffany Stratton was fantastic. Again, a great showing for Tiffany, in a future main roster star. I see her as the kind of future Charlotte Flair for sure. Spalsy, any picks for you?
Not necessarily people, but there was a couple of things that I love my stats, and I was kind of running down who was in there because there was a lot of criticism about there not being any old school wrestlers or Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression, etc., being included, and it was all kind of just modern day or the roster. I think that's a great thing, because we can't have it that some people are complaining and go, they don't use the people that they've got, but then you hanker for X-Pac to be back in. Yes, it would give you a pop. I think to an extent, maybe the men's Rumble could have had a couple more moments in it, but I think that was all that was missing. But in terms of justification of bringing people back, not when you've got such a deep roster, and they've been building this for a long time, that they can do that. And the stats I have was in the women's roster, out of the 30 entrants, 24 of them have been in NXT for an extended period of time. In the men's, it was 21, and even then, there's a couple that have at least made appearances. So it's proof that NXT has kind of got. We're a year, it's 10 years in February from NXT as we know it being around. And I would argue it's probably the biggest thing that WWE's ever done, because without NXT, what would the card be looking like these days? It's just scary to think what it'd be like. And I think that was great. And a very nice little touch that I don't think they've done in the Rumble before. I really enjoyed seeing the individual timers for, like who's been in the ring for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, that was a really good touch. Yeah,
I like that because they're giving it a little bit more of a sort of real, like, this is the person to watch. Like, this person's going to be the Iron Man or the Iron Woman, and I like that. I like kind of having that like stats because I'm a stat guy. I love it.
Yeah, man. Absolutely, real nice feature, and I hope we see more of that. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Sam is clacking in the background there.
The chair, man. I got it from Brian last.
It's good. I've seen that chair. It looks very comfortable, but it's very squeaky.
Yeah, you have.
Guys, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. For those that have joined us, thank you so much for making the time. And for those that come back to it, thank you so much for joining us as well. Don't forget to tune in to Give Me a Whole Yeah for Dan Hargreaves' review of Raw. Don't forget to tune in on Friday for Sam's review of SmackDown. And don't forget to check out Wrestling Royalty for more of Andrew Spores' beautiful face. And obviously great wrestling journalism. Wrestlesphere will have some interviews with TNA stars and possibly some WWE stars through the rest of the year, as well as various independents. So do keep tabs on Wrestlesphere.com if you have not yet. Thank you for joining us for the very first wrestling stream on Wrestlesphere and over on Give Me a Whole Yeah and on Soundsphere and all that stuff. Anything to add, guys, before we finish? Anything I've missed? Anything you'd like to plug?
You've done it all, mate. You just give me a whole yeah. Wrestling Royalty and Wrestlesphere.
Let us know in the comments, what you enjoyed about the Rumble, because we do check the comments. We love to see people letting us know their thoughts, and it's been great having live comments as well. We want to know, what did you think of the Rumble? What did you think of this stream? Because if you've got stuck with us for this long, you're nearly 2 hours deep. That's basically both the Royal Rumble matches. So let us know what you'd like to see in the future on Wrestlesphere. If we're missing anything, we'd love to know. And the only way you can do that as well is to hit that subscribe button and make sure you hit the like button while you're there as well.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you again very, very soon. Take it easy, guys. We can't say whole yeah this time, so we Wrestlesphere! That's stuck. What do we got?
I'm doing that. That's what it is. It's that. It's whole yeah, you do that. So Wrestlesphere, it's a W.
See you guys. Oh, we can have Malachi Black. He did me a Soundsphere outro, but it's a Wrestlesphere thing. So we'll just have the Wrestlesphere.
Soundsphere owns Wrestlesphere. It's the parent company. You can use it.
Should we have Malachi Black on? There we go.
Yeah,
bye, guys.
I am AEW superstar Malachi Black. And every Wednesday and sometimes Friday, you can catch me on TNT, where I execute some form of justice onto any deserving individual that stands in my way. All for the improvement of the House of Black. But today I'm a messenger, which is ironic because the name Malachi translated means messenger. And this message goes out to anyone from Soundsphere. Whether you've read the interviews on the website itself, or Soundsphere TV, Soundsphere wants you to know that they are very thankful for each and every one of you. So, from myself, via the House of Black, via Soundsphere, thank you very, very much. And before I go, I will leave you with this gem. There's one absolute truth. The house never loses. The house always wins. Go check out Soundsphere. Thank you.
Oh, man.
Goosebumps.
Man, how cool was that? I forgot how good that was. I've come back on with Drew McIntyre's crotch to tell you how much I just botched the ending. So we'll have a Wrestlesphere outro, and I'll try and get it right this time. See you later, guys. Thanks so much.